Revived and Renovated. It is so exciting to have you all with us as my dear friend Paige Rien and myself sit and discuss just kind of our thoughts on faith and family and hearts and homes and how all of it seems to intersect together, and our observations of just what being revived and renovated in our souls as well as in our homes looks like. And so we're excited you guys come and listen to our conversations. I think there's a lot of conversation that can happen there within our homes and with items that we have in our home, especially when maybe we're on a budget and we shouldn't be going out and spending and splurging, and with the shutdowns as well, shopping is a little harder. But the verse I was really drawn to for being repurposed was from Proverbs, and I love Proverbs. So many really salient, short and sweet, like impact points for you to daily living. I love Proverbs, but Proverbs 19:21 says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." And I thought, oh my, that is definitely, where I am. I always have lots of plans. I have lots of agendas, lots of things, but ultimately it's the Lord's purpose, and he repurposes my heart many times to go in the direction he has for me. So that was kind of where I was leaning in when I thought about this conversation today. And I'm going to kind of toss it over to you, Paige, to talk about like what you think when you think about the word repurpose.
Well, I was just thinking as you're reading that it can't be an accident that all of these words have an incredible biblical meaning and an incredible meaning in the home, right? And I don't just mean in the home, I mean in furniture, in DIY, in all of the work of making a home and interior design, everything from I'm gonna paint an old dresser from the thrift store to I'm going to do like $100,000 renovation. It can't be an accident that these two worlds are connected by these words. I mean, every single word we talk about. And I think that I love that verse that you read, and I literally have to make a note, read more Proverbs, because short and impactful is my jam. Wow. That's great. I'll take all those tips. But no, I love that too. I mean, repurpose is such a little bit of a buzzword, I would even say, for design, because people love the idea of repurposing something cool or interesting in a new way. And of course, repurposing materials maybe from like a beloved tree becomes a table, or even like some barn wood and repurposed elsewhere. But I think also just in terms of economics, we repurpose things all the time to save money. For instance, I have a customer that is gutting her kitchen, but we're putting the cabinets in the basement because waste not, want not. And also, they're still good. They're just not, they don't work for her as a kitchen, but there's no reason she can't use them. And I think, we don't talk about that enough. I mean, like when I was sort of first started working in this business, there's all this talk about green stuff, right? Super green, what's green, what's recyclable. The reality is the most green thing is usually half. That's the most, you could use something horribly bad for the environment, but if you use it once and you don't throw it out and you're using your stuff for like a long period of time, it's getting a lot of longevity for you and your family, then that is very green, actually. And so I would be asked by these green companies, can you say a talk about this? And then I would get up there and they'd say that, and they're like, that's not what, that wasn't the talk we were hoping for. We were hoping for like you promote our bamboo flooring. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I actually think if you have your flooring's fine, you shouldn't replace it, even with bamboo. Anyway, so my speaking career was short. But no, I also love this idea of, the purpose that we have maybe to, have a certain house, live a certain way, have a certain family, and then, God comes in, and we're very dependent on God for, children coming in and all these other things. So I think a lot of times our vision for our life as adults, or sometimes we need to be open because it doesn't always turn out our way. And a house often reflects that, right? Yeah. Which is, it can be painful.
Yeah, no, sometimes we buy too big a house or we buy too small a house, and we realize it later on. And we either repurpose the space by, knocking out a wall and making it bigger, or, renting out the room over the garage, right? Like you have to like make adjustments. I think I actually talked to a class of college students this week about purpose and, kind of how things change. Like they're in college majoring in their major right now, but how many people actually continue to do that for the rest of their lives? It's not necessarily the decisions you make when you're younger are all going to work. Sometimes you got to repurpose and replan, what you're going to do. And that's okay. And like, that's okay. I think that's the hardest thing maybe for people is sometimes to be flexible. But I love the idea you talked about, even the wood and the table. I have a dear client who had a massive tree fall in her yard after a hurricane last year, and it was just huge. But they made a table out of it, and like talk
Yeah.
about a piece to be able to have a conversation about, right? Like
Oh
forever
my
and ever, you get to talk about, because she had just been on that porch that got crushed by that tree, but the dog had come out and gotten her attention, and she left, and the tree fell. So like she has this beautiful story now to relate, as well as having this beautiful piece of furniture made out of this crazy massive tree that fell over. So something that was devastating, for their home, and having to deal with all of that. But there's going to be beauty from that. And, just, I love that.
Oh my gosh, I just love that. That really speaks to my heart. And in using either a tragedy or a trial or a challenge in a way in the home and keeping it. This is kind of an odd story, but when my husband and I, before we had kids, we traveled a lot. And
Right.
we were, believe it or not, we're in the city of Sarajevo. We did like an Eastern European trek, very dangerous. Like not dangerous, but not the kind of traveling we would do now, and no cell phones. And anyway, so Sarajevo is a war-torn city and has a lot of vestiges of the war. And they did this thing when there was a mortar that exploded in the street. They painted the whole red, and they call it the Sarajevo Roses. And they kept it as a memorial to the war that had happened there. And we were there, in the early 2000s. And this is really like in the last 10 to 15 years that these had happened. And I just bring that up to say, sometimes things happen in our house and we're very eager to cover it up. Obviously a flood or like a tree falling in, like you gotta fix it. But there's also another approach where when something really happens to us, giving ourselves a chance to keep a piece of it. And not, I don't want to say memorialize it, but keeping a piece of it in some way. Sometimes it's like using something of your loved one that may have passed away. And a lot of my clients have something from a parent who's passed away, and they're like, I need to do something with this piece. I don't know what to do with it, but let's do something. Let's keep it. I want to keep it in front of my face. I want to use it, not as an obligation to use it, but as a piece of that person.
Right.
And I think that our homes should have something like that. It's about the journey that we've been on, that we've overcome, or someone who's left us. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, well, it's the remembrance. It's being able to tell the story, and it's story's important. Like it's everyone has stories, and everyone has something worth value to share with someone else that could be an encouragement, that could be an inspiration. We've all had difficult experiences, and when we share that with someone else, there's a bond that's created in that shared experience, and then there's hope. And man, of all the things in the world we need right now is massive amounts of hope, because there are so many people who are struggling. Having new purpose gives hope, right? There's more to life out there. There's something still. There's going to be life beyond 2020. There's hope. And
4 months till the year.
Not that I'm wishing the year to be over, but it's been one, it's just, it's been so challenging. And, when you have a piece of furniture or you have some things left, that you can tell the story and share with someone else and be an encouragement and say, you know what, it was awful at the time. It really was awful. It's like cancer's awful, and having a relative go through that. And yet there's hope, because then I can share how we made it beyond it,
And I also think we encourage others to, I don't want to say expose, but express not just the bright spots. Like I talk in the book a lot about like using your best vacations and using your best travel and using your beloved relatives. But the reality is our stories are not just rainbows and vacation. Yeah. Actually, that's like a real highlight reel. And I think there's parts of it. I have art in my house that really speaks to the worst parts of my life. And you might say, well, why would you want that up? But I can't explain it other than to say there's some art that just touches and reminds me of a hard time that is actually not here anymore. And that's even a moment of just registering that's not here right now. And that God's walked me through that is very, very powerful. I could have just things that remind me of the present perfect beauty, but that's just not who I am. And I think our stories, as you said, are so powerful for ourselves. And then when somebody comes in and say, what's up with that art? I'm like, well, let me tell you, this reminds me of some of my darkest days. She reminds me of me. She's a dark soul who's troubled, and I see myself in her. And I think that just a reminder, that God's given us a purpose, and I think he's repurposed us. If I think about it, and like we've, in many ways, a life or a journey is being repurposed and being changed for something different. When you were talking a little bit about that verse, really wanted to be an interior designer, very, very focused on a certain kind of work. And I used to live in New York City and do a certain kind of projects. And I got a little bit like disenchanted with those projects. And I was like, I think I want to do different kinds of projects. And then I worked a little bit more. And then I'm like, you know what? I think I want to do, I think I would really want to invite God into my work. I think I want I kind of can't really continue to do this unless my faith is a part of it, which doesn't work for everybody, but didn't feel like I could ignore that. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I had one vision for a career and then I'm really open to God's will for me and his call. Yeah. And I think that's a little bit about this word today. I mean, sometimes we're not in charge, of the work he set before us. And I think, I can see, I see a lot of times possibilities for going in a direction professionally that is really where we just talk about this in the most strict design terms. We don't ever cross over, Right. I can see that. But I don't, that's not the path for me.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think that the whole part of being repurposed too is understanding that may not have been the original plan, right? Like when we repurpose items and we repurpose furniture or we repurpose a space in our home to be more accommodating, that wasn't the original plan, but it's what we need now. And it's the right thing for us in this moment. It's the right thing for us in this day. And when we talk about it as far as our spiritual life, it's a better plan than what my plan was. It's always a better plan. His plan is always better than mine. And so for me, again, it just brings me back to being filled with hope. I don't like change. I really don't. I like to set it, forget it, and never mess with it. I am a girl that likes to not make change. Mm-hmm. And so change can be really off-putting for me. I have to just be okay with it. And I'm not always. And so, but that's what God is always teaching me. He's always stretching me. He's always moving me in a new way, and he's repurposing my steps. And that involves change and being okay with it. And I know you love change. So I feel like, we're like polar opposites on this one.
I could be a change addict. I'm thinking about your beautiful screens. I definitely would have spray painted them 5 different colors by now. 100%. Even though they're amazing gold and they should never be anything but gold, I would have made them black, white, and hot pink by now. I mean, that's without a doubt.
At least you tried it. You don't know what you like until you try it. I know, but I can't.
I know, but I think also, but that's, I think I arrive at the same place where I want to be in charge of all the change. Right? So, in some ways, it's a resistance to anybody else's change. I want to be in charge of the change. I want my finger on the buttons. Yeah. And so the change is very much my own. So I think in essence, it's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, it's still a control thing. Yeah.
What's going on? This looks totally different. I don't know. You miss it a day yourself. So, but I think it's, I think the flexibility, the older I get, the flexibility and the openness, and even just to be open to other people's approaches and other people's input. And, that slows me down a little bit too. God speaks to us in lots of different ways.
Yes, it does.
Projects.
Well, if he can use a donkey to talk to Balaam, I'm pretty sure he can use most anything to get our attention. So,
Indeed.
Well, it's been awesome to talk to you today about being repurposed. I know we could probably go down 100 different avenues on this particular word. There's really no end to talking about change and being repurposed and plans and what God has for us. But we probably have to cut it here, or IGTV is going to make us make 2 or more episodes. And, we don't like that when that happens. So we will hold it here. And we just thank you guys for joining us as we had the conversation. It was awesome to hang out with you again, Paige. Thank you so much for joining me for Revived and Renovated.
It was awesome. Thanks, Victoria.
Bye.